Well, for years I didn't. Uh, and most people who didn't notice I had an accent didn't even know I wasn't born here. Uh, my husband, when I first met him, was the first one. He said, "You weren't born here, were you?" I mean, he noticed it right away, but most people, I think, don't. So I didn't want to talk about it. It just even didn't come up. I mean, I did tell my story to my husband. I'm not even sure if I told my son when he was young. I don't think so. I tried to teach him German, so I mean, he knew where I came from, but I wasn't very successful. And then, of course, I joined the theater, yeah, which I was reluctant to do, but I'm very glad I did. I really enjoyed it. The children were so wonderful. And that's when I started talking about it. I realized how important it is. The ones I really want to reach, which I don't think I do, is the Holocaust deniers and those kind of people. Well, I was born in Frankfurt, and I had a pretty good life for about 7 years. And then Hitler came, and my father was very optimistic. He said, "Oh, it'll blow over and they'll throw him out." And he had no intention of leaving. Then various things happened. Then we had to register to come to the United States, and we were, at the bottom of the pile because we waited so long. My father had a very good business, and he enjoyed doing. He had a business, something like Dun and Bradstreet, and he not that big, of course. And we lived in a comfortable house, and we had servants, and things were fine until Hitler made himself important. And then we finally got our numbers. I don't remember whether it's before or after November 9th, the Kristallnacht. They came and took my father and to Buchenwald. And he didn't get out for 3 weeks. And the reason he got out is my father was honored in World War I by the German government. He had a silver star, a bronze star. And because he was the only one left in the regiment who wasn't killed. And so my mother went to the authorities and said, "Look, he fought for Germany, and look what you're doing to him now." So they let him out. And he came back after 3 weeks, pretty broken. And he looked terrible. So then he really made a big effort to get us all out. And he had an affidavit for my brother and me, but they felt that my brother, being older than I, should stay with my mother to help her leave when her visa came through. Well, anyway, I went to England on the last children's transport, and then the week later, the war broke out between England and Germany. And of course, it was impossible for my mother and brother to come out, and they were both killed in Auschwitz. So then I was in England for 6 months in a boarding school, and then my father and I came to the United States. Well, unfortunately, my first experience wasn't very good because my father and I got off the boat, and they had asked us various questions before, and they sent us to Ellis Island. when it wasn't common practice to send people to Ellis Island. And they put him in the hospital there. He had had a kidney operation which never healed very well, and they wanted to make sure that he wouldn't be a burden to the government. So I didn't know what was going on. I sat in that big hall for about 2.5 days, and then I was told that and I said, "Can't I see my father?" He said, "No." He said, "We can't send you to the hospital, and the hospital people can't come and see you." So I had no idea, but somebody told me that if they find that my father would be a burden, then we would be sent back. Well, the war had already started, and going back to England was practically impossible. And where else were they going to send us? So my first impression was the Statue of Liberty, and I said, "Gee, I'm not really liberated." But then after that, things got better, and my father had a hard time making a living. He was already in his 50s, and his English wasn't that great, so he sold. He had a cousin here who was in the leather business, so he sold these leather cases for policemen and firemen for pen and pencils. So that's what my father did here, and then he got sick and wasn't able to work, and so things got pretty tight. But I went to school. My aunt, well, they're not really my aunt and uncle, they're more distant relatives, took me in, and I went to high school there, and in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. So I'm very happy, of course, having come here, and if it was a week later, I wouldn't have made it. And however, I feel if the laws were less restricted, my mother and brother could have made it, and I wouldn't have had to go through all this. Well, I had a coworker, and she said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, that was a Friday night, and I said, "I have no plans tonight except to go to my father for dinner." And he says, "Well, why don't you go with me? There's a movie. It was Joan of Arc, the oldest version of it." And I really didn't want to go, but I decided to go. Well, it turned out it was a club that I'd never been to, and it was really a pickup place. And so I saw the movie, and I said, "Well, I'll have a Coke and then I'll leave," which I did. And my husband came over, my to-be husband came over, and we hit it off right away. Made a date for the following Sunday. He was born here. He had never been to the Statue of Liberty, and neither had I. So we went to the Statue of Liberty. So the rest is history. Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose most girls, it's the wedding. I had a very small one because my father couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford it. And my husband was, at that time, working and not getting too much money, but and he was working on his PhD, so we just had the immediate family, but it is a happy memory. And then there are other things, like I said, my son's graduations, his marriage, my grandchildren. Well, be vigilant, and try to do what's right, and see that others do what is right. And if you can do something about it, do that.